Good evening. I'm calling tonight's meeting to order. Alexis, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Duran.
Here.
Councilmember Heilman.
Here.
Councilmember Meister.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Horvath is out this evening.
Out.
Mayor D'Amico.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And approval of the agenda. I believe we have one item that we're...
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, Mayor Pro Tem Lindsay Horvath requested that item 5A, information on smoke-free multifamily dwelling programs, be tabled until she can participate in the discussion.
And is there anyone here to speak on that item? No. Okay. All right then. Any other changes to the agenda?
Mayor, let me try to put a couple things on consent. How about item 4A, the seismic retrofitting item? Can we put that on consent?
Okay with me?
Great. How about item 4B, the consultant on Laurel? You want to talk about that? Okay, all right. How about item 5B, the parcel of land to the Sunset Time development? Can we put
I'm okay
that?
with that.
Yep.
All
Okay,
right.
5B to consent.
Okay, and, oh, go ahead.
I was wondering if we could pull 2I on the insurance providers for discussion.
Absolutely. Item 2I for the insurance providers, that's from our consent calendar. It's regarding the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority for general liability and workers' compensation. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we need to have a after council closed session item. It's regarding the City of West Hollywood versus MDA Johnson Favreau. I have the case number, but I think actually our city attorney is going to fill in all the appropriate details.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Yes, it's City of West Hollywood versus MDA Johnson Favreau, case number SC 122763. It would be added as a closed session item under pending litigation, Government Code 54956.9D1. Under the Brown Act, an item can be added to the agenda if there's need to take immediate action, and that need arose after the posting of your agenda. This case is poised to go to trial imminently, and some developments arose in the case that we learned about just today, and so we need to call a quick closed session after. We can hold it at the end of the meeting to discuss these matters. So if you can make those findings, we can add it to the agenda tonight.
Without objection? All right. And just to be super clear about the process, we will have a closed session public comment period as well, should anyone wish to talk about that item in that case, and that will happen after we adjourn this meeting in our closed session room. Mm-hmm. Okay, so with those changes to the agenda, we have a motion and we have a second, and it passes 4-0. Terrific. Do we have any adjournment motions this evening?
Yes, Mayor. I would request that we adjourn in memory of Glenn Richard Theriak. Glenn was the father to our city employee, Beth Theriak. Beth works in the city council and city managers division. Glenn was a beloved son, brother, husband, father, and grandfather. He made an indelible mark on everyone with his infectious laughter, love of life, family, and friends. He had the ability to tell amazing stories and jokes and captivate everyone in the room. He was a man of his word, intentional, honest, and principled. He will be missed by his family and friends, and our hearts certainly go out to Beth and her family during this very difficult time. I would request that we adjourn in his memory without objection.
Without objection. And I have one from our Transportation Commissioner, David Warren, a close friend and neighbor of David's. Robert Trask died 10 days ago. He grew up in the Fairfax district and was a West Hollywood resident for 20 years. Without objection, we'll adjourn in his name. Thank you very much.
I have two requests for adjournment, Mayor. First is Annette Renwick, Renwick, who would have been 103 next month. She's the mother of Diane Abbott, longtime lesbian activist in and around the city. And finally, I'd like us to please adjourn the memory of the Virginia Beach municipal employees. I think it'd be nice if West Hollywood City Hall sent an adjournment to the Virginia Beach City Hall.
All right. Is that the end of our, yes, it seems to be, presentations this evening? I think Councilmember Heilman has one.
I do. It's a bit bittersweet. We lost one of our very, very long-serving rent stabilization commissioners, David Gregoire. David served on Rent Stabilization Commission from 2000 to 2018. So he was on the commission for 18 years, hearing hearings, formulating policy. His work has taken him to New York, and he's had a number of work commitments that are getting in the way of his commission duties, but I'm sure that he is going to continue to serve the city of West Hollywood in other capacities. David, if you could come by and come on down. Thank you so much for your service. Please join me in congratulating David and thanking him.
Thank you, David. We now will go to the public comment portion of our agenda. We have a pretty good number, but I think we can get through them all. The first person on our public comment list is John Erickson to speak on item 2L, and then Joseph Boltman.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. Happy Pride. I'm here to speak in support of item 2L on your agenda tonight, the public education campaign against transphobia. So many members of our LGBT community are being attacked, but our trans community is under egregious attacks right now from every angle of society, and I really support this item coming forward and thank you all for your support tonight. And then in addition, I would love to see any type of public support for the council and the city to participate in the September 28th March on Washington, the Transgender March on Washington. We've participated in large national marches in the past in the city, from the March for Women's Rights that happened, as well as a whole bunch of other ones. And I think having this nation's first Transgender Advisory Board and all of the activists that have risen to prominent acclaim on there and have done so much for us, it would be great to see them featured so significantly on the national stage in the city of West Hollywood as well. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joseph Boltman to be followed by James Wen.
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Joseph Boltman. I work at MedMen WeHo, and I'm a proud member of UFCW Local 770. I've actually been in the cannabis industry for years. I've seen it grow from trimming in a basement, going through raids, to being a legal, established business. The legacy shops here in West Hollywood have fought for this community to help ensure accessibility to cannabis for its citizens. We have a strong bond with West Hollywood. Our presence brings people to WeHo, and we partner with local businesses to help them thrive alongside us. We have collected 2,000 support cards from people who want the legacy shops to stay and continue to serve this community. If we do not obtain permanent licenses, it is the end of these shops. Medical licenses are no longer viable in this industry. Our medical licensing patients are not bringing in prescriptions anymore. They no longer need one, but continue to rely on our service because they know who we are and they trust our product knowledge. I implore you, for the sake of all the shop's workers, for the people we help every day, to allow us to stay open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boltman. James Wen to be followed by Alexis Sanchez.
Good evening, Mayor D'Amico and members of City Council. My name is James Wynn, and I represent the Transgender Advisory Board. I'm up here today to thank you for putting on the consent calendar item 2L, Public Education Campaign Against Transphobia. I'd I'd like to especially thank my colleague and the chair of the Transgender Advisory Board, Alexis Sanchez, who made this a platform for the Transgender Advisory Board, as well as through the West Hollywood Project to support. In addition, echoing John Erickson's comments, I think it's highly important that in this time of the transgender community being under attack by the administration, where we are as a nation working towards passing the Equality Act, that we support all platforms and organizations that want to bring greater public education against transphobia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nguyen. Alexis Sanchez to be followed by Steve No.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. I'm here tonight to thank you for item 2L. You know, I've had the honor of serving the city on the Transgender Advisory Board for the last 3 years. Over the course of that, there's been 3 high-profile incidents of transphobia within city limits. So this was something that motivated me to want to just do something, right? And this was something that I thought that the city could take on. It's something that could raise awareness about the issue of transphobia, and I thought that messaging just across, you know, on bus stops, in businesses that said transphobia is not okay, in what the city of West Hollywood is something that's very much aligned with the city's values and really sends the message that trans people are safe here. When I first started my transition, West Hollywood was somewhere that I knew I could come and be safe. So I want to make sure that that stays true for the generations to come. I also want to speak in support of just personally in my support of the Transgender March on Washington, D.C. I think any large-scale national marches do wonders for elevating trans voices and just, again, showing the next generation that we're here, we're working for justice, we're working for more opportunities, and we're working to normalize and elevate trans lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Steve No to be followed by Jackie Subek.
Yes, my name is Stephen O. I was screwed, I was fucked, I was trashed by, guess who? John Durant. John Durant took my $5,000 to defend my criminal case over the phone when I was suicidal with a terminal illness. He sent an email to my adversary attorney saying, look at him, he's mentally ill. He doesn't need any of my help. He never showed up on my court date, and I was screwed, spent so many jail time. Now I'm in the immigration deportation court. This website will detail his letter, send to my adversary attorney, saying that, oh la la, he's mentally ill, he doesn't need my help. 5,000 swallowed, he will not return my call. He didn't step out of the mayorship because I reported to the media. That's why he stepped down. Not only Charlie Beck was allegedly, she was stepped down, not only that I was the reason. Please read my website.
Thank you, Mr. No.
This is morally wrong. He had a 3-year free rating, 2 of them are fee dispute. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jackie Subek to be followed by Ty Kalis.
Do that a little bit. Hi. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I just have a few things I wanted to say, and I'm here today in the hopes that you guys will listen and hear us and really start to connect. It's been almost 6 months since the announcements were made for cannabis. There are half a dozen lounges who still have no pathway to a viable business. We are spending lots of time, we are spending lots of money, and the biggest roadblock right now is actually the city of West Hollywood. And I as one of the businesses, would love to talk with each of you and have you actually hear and see what's going on right now. I want to take a minute and commend all of these people back here, these young people, because they're speaking up right now for cannabis. They're standing up in front of you guys and speaking for something they believe in. And that's what this is about. And if we don't have the opportunity to build the businesses that you guys gave us licenses for, then how can we ever do that? How can we ever continue to help the community if we're continued to be prohibited, continually being restricted, and continue being roadblocked? This is a progressive city. I'm a 25-year resident here. I love it here. I want us to stick to our core values, and one of those is building economic progress, building economic development. So I encourage each of you to really take the time and come and sit with us and listen, because we will explain where we are right now. And we could use your help to do this. This is the only way. We're going to have to amend the ordinance. I'm not going to go into what tonight, but I want you to start thinking about that, because that's going to have to happen in order to make this all work. So thank you for your time tonight. Please, please join this with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Subek. Ty Calise, to be followed by Lauren Banuelos.
Hello, City Council. My name is Ty Calise, and I'm speaking on behalf of MedMen in hopes our license gets renewed. I've been a hospitality lead with MedMen for 15 months. Within 3 months of being with the company, I was promoted, and at the exact same time, my mother was diagnosed with a terminal rare brain disease. Due to my training at MedMen, I gained enough knowledge about CBD and cannabis to help ease her suffering in her last days. I was barely past 90 days, and my managers were very flexible and supportive. Some of them even visited her in the hospital. And from that day, I looked at MedMen as a family and not just a job. As of last January, our union contract provided me with dental, vision, as well as health care, and I've never had those benefits prior in my experience in the retail industry, let alone an entry-level position at a cannabis startup. MedMen has given my peers a sense of fulfillment and purpose. Every day we enlighten guests as we heal the community, and that's why I love my job. I truly believe we are changing not only the perspectives of people about cannabis, but lives daily. And I have so many guests give me testimony about how cannabis has helped them with their illnesses, and they stopped taking prescription pills that gave them horrible side effects. We received a lot of support from our West Hollywood community. As of now, we have received more than 2,000 signatures petitioning to keep the original 4 dispensaries open. In closing, I'm going to ask the West Hollywood City Council to grandfather in the original 4 shops. I truly believe that we have an important history deeply intertwined in the city of West Hollywood, and I thank you for granting me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ty. Lauren Banuelos, to be followed by Mecca Brahman. Bramhan. Excuse me, Mecca, you'll have to teach me how to say your name.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Banuelos, and I'm the general manager at the West Hollywood MedMen. I've come to speak now a few times. Nice to see you guys again. And I'm here to thank you for the extension that you granted us back in March. Because of this extension, I remind you that our 60 employees are able to continue their access to fully covered health benefits, as well as maintain their employment. Last time I spoke, I shared that our location led the way in cannabis' biggest holiday on 420 by hosting 2,500 customers. In addition, we were visited and interviewed by Channel 5, Channel 7, and Channel 11 News. I'd also like to remind you that since then, myself, as well as a few employees, including some right behind me, volunteered at Project Angel Food, hosted a SBCA LA donation drive, and volunteered at Sound the Alarm with the Red Cross Foundation, where smoke detectors were installed in homes that couldn't afford them. Next week, we'll be volunteering and supporting the West Hollywood Pride Parade. I share this with you as a reminder that not only are we passionate about our location, but supporting the community in West Hollywood. Should we not see an extension on our license past December 31st, my 60 employees and growing team will be greatly impacted. As the City of West Hollywood continues to assess the option of grandfathering the pre-existing 4 dispensaries, I'm here to remind you that we are very appreciative of the time and energy on these matters. I'm eager to hear updates and look forward to continue serving our community until then. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Banuelos. Mecca Brahman is next. Please take a second and teach me how to say your name, if you don't mind.
Mecca Brahman.
Mecca Brahman, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mecca Brahman, and I am the visual manager at MedMen West Hollywood. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I currently reside in downtown LA. Since joining the MedMen West Hollywood just two months ago, I have truly enjoyed exploring this wonderful city. The greatest joy that I get out of working in West Hollywood is being at MedMen. I not only enjoy making my store beautiful as the visual manager, but I truly enjoy helping the consumers that walk in. From first-timers to someone trying something new or someone dealing with a health issue, MedMen has given me the opportunity to help others. I hope you consider to grandfather the existing 4 dispensaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brahman. Joe Ibarra, to be followed by Timothy P.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Joey Barr, and I am the store manager of the MedMen West Hollywood location. This is my first time speaking before you today, so thank you. I want to thank you first off for giving my team and I a chance to speak before you today. Over the past year that I have been with MedMen, I have seen so much growth not only in our company, but in our staff of 60 and growing. We have been fortunate enough to create an environment in which not only do our staff love, but all of our repeat local West Hollywood community members, along with their lovely furry friends. We have a lot of them. We're fortunate to have such great relationships with our local businesses around us. Oftentimes we have plenty of tourists all over the world who visit our store, and they're interested in which restaurant to eat at, in which we can strongly encourage one of our neighboring restaurants near us. With the hopeful license renewal, we will continue our support within the community and will give our incredible staff continued financial and health support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibarra. Timothy P., to be followed by Danny Crone.
Hello. Hi, I'm Timothy Patterson. I work at West Hollywood, the MedMen store. MedMen has been a major pillar, focus, income, and inspiration for my life since beginning my journey with such an established company in January of this year. Following my divorce, I was without a job and income until MedMen gave me an opportunity to showcase my skills in sales and 5-star hospitality. Being a cannabis connoisseur, I have been inside many of the outside city dispensaries as well as almost applied to work at some until seeing the standard that they uphold. However, in comparison to the standard MedMen has, it is unlike any other I've seen. Venturing into other dispensaries, the employees lack knowledge as well as any unapproachable energy throughout the stores. It's almost as if, as a client, you need to go in there knowing exactly what you want and exactly how it needs to be used. I have many clients dealing with physical and mental health issues, many of which have been to these other establishments with horrific experiences. There is a lack of knowledge being issued and incorrect products per the client's specific needs. Working at MedMen West Hollywood has not educated me on a daily basis, but it reminds me of the remedies that cannabis can provide for the correct knowledge we're taught on a daily basis. I have now built many relationships with West Hollywood residents suffering from anxiety, HIV, chemotherapy, arthritis, depression, psoriasis, PTSD, epilepsy, Crohn's disease, Parkinson's, lupus, the list goes on, etc. This happens on a daily basis because residents do not feel comfortable going to other dispensaries based off of a lack of knowledge. All in all, MedMen West Hollywood has been a vital part of the LGBTQ community, veteran community, senior citizen community, African American community, canine and feline community, as well as our entire city as a whole. Losing our license would not only be detrimental to our employees and our livelihood, but the people that you love that live here in West Hollywood as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patterson. Danny Crone, to be followed by Manuel Rubio.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Danny Crone. I am a graduate of CalArts. I am an actor, I'm a writer, and for 9 months I've been a bud tender at MedMen. I've come here today because we've come here today, we'd like we have for the past several council meetings, to ask for the recreational marijuana license of our 4 original dispensaries to be grandfathered in at the end of the year. We have joined the union. I am 24 and I have healthcare, I have vision, and I have dental, and I'm a working artist. That is unheard of. MedMen is a large employer within the community of West Hollywood. Many of us live within walking distance of the shop, and we are active members of the community. When I first started my job, I thought that it would be selling weed to stoners, and that is an important part of the gig, but it's not all that it is. The past week alone, I helped a woman whose mother has Alzheimer's and needed help with her son downing. I helped a man whose wife is anorexic, needs marijuana in order to eat, but doesn't like to be high. And I addressed a group of women, all of whom could have easily been my grandmother. I talked to them for about an hour because one of them had cancer, they heard CBD could help, and they had a lot of questions. That, to me, is the magic of MedMen. We offer a safe space for people to come in, ask questions without feeling judged, and find the help that they need. We now are living at the end of nearly a century-long prohibition that was fueled by racism and misinformation, and people are flocking to MedMen to experience what a world of legal cannabis looks like. It's not uncommon to see suitcases in the corner of our store because people want to come to us before they go to their hotels. We bring people into West Hollywood, and then we in turn send them back out into the community. We tell them restaurants to go to, different nightclubs to hit up, places where they can enjoy themselves within the city when they might not have been here otherwise. I hope you all decide to allow the 4 dispensaries who have been here since the beginning to remain and to continue our work within the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crone. Manuel Rubio, to be followed by Chela Demure.
Hello, good evening, council members, mayor, city staff, and thank you to the city council for considering this issue. My name is Manuel Rubio. I am a hospitality associate at MedMen West Hollywood. I'm here to support recreational cannabis and medical cannabis. Since Prop 64 passed, the industry has widespread support, not only locally, but nationwide and internationally as well. The Adult Use of Marijuana Act has provided for the adult use of cannabis and has given us the opportunity to show Californians how a city at the forefront can be welcoming to a burgeoning new sector of our economy. The city of West Hollywood has an opportunity to raise the bar and to remain a leader and to continue to inspire other cities. And all of us at MedMen West Hollywood are working very hard to do just that and look forward to making you proud. I envision the city that we know and love, West Hollywood, as a town that says we welcome the cannabis industry, which means we can continue to be a tourist destination location for all. And also more jobs, which creates economic opportunities for a lot of people that truly need it and depend on it like me. And let's not forget the benefits of taxation that will go towards social services, which are extremely needed. This is why having our business license is so important to me and all my coworkers, and to a lot of other people that depend on the original 4 to feed our families and pay our bills. I left my career of 18 years because I believe in this industry, and I love it. I truly love it. It is very scary and sad to even think that one day, MedMen West Hollywood might close its doors. Thank you all so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rubio. Chela Demure, to be followed by our last speaker, Steve Martin.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shayla Demure, and I am the founder and the president of Unique Women's Coalition. We are the first Black trans-led organization here in Southern California. But tonight I stand in front of you as a representative for the National Trans Visibility March. We are in alignment with 2L and appreciate that the City of West Hollywood is considering the creation of the Public Education Against Transphobia. Members of the transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary communities will be taking a major stand against hate and discrimination when we rally in the nation's capital for the first national ever Trans Visibility March on Washington, D.C. in September. Although the current administration has intentionally rolled back efforts to prevent inclusion of transgender communities in the U.S. Census, we know that the City of West Hollywood, with the passage of Item 2L, will be a leader in changing that narrative. West Hollywood has historically been a beacon of comfort and safety for gay and lesbian communities to party, work, thrive, and to be safe while living their authentic lives. More than ever, trans people are in need of safe haven and the ability to exist out loud. If this city supports this effort, it will send a message to the world and to local residents that WeHo stands with us in solidarity, and our national efforts will be able to highlight and increase the awareness of the lead that the City of West Hollywood takes in making GNC, lesbian, gay, and trans community members live and their lives and their voices matter. Trans ambassadors from across the nation, including West Hollywood and Los Angeles County, will lead the charge, partnering with national and local allies, calling for the passage of the Equality Act, which West Hollywood first endorsed in September 2016. The National Transvisibility March is of critical importance of this time. We would like an opportunity to work with you and are asking the city to support to help our organization to generate more awareness and the West Hollywood's public education against transphobia, and together calling for the passage of the Equality Act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. North. Thank you so much. Steve Martin is our final speaker.
Happy Pride, Mayor, Council. That's a quick trip to Heidelberg. Anyway, I do want to support 2L. Thank you for bringing it. You know, it was 20 years ago, thereabouts, when John Heilman drafted some of the first trans-supportive legislation that the city passed. I mean, that was historic. I mean, there wasn't legislation like that almost anywhere in the country. So we need to continue to hold up that banner, and I strongly urge you to appropriate the money to send all of the members who are interested of our transgender advisory board to Washington, D.C. for this march. I think it's a small price to pay to show our support. It's a small price to pay to stick it in the eye of the Trump administration. I mean, I think that there's ways of showing resistance, and there's ways of showing resistance that are positive, and I think this is one of them. And I think it's a really important one. To change gears, I also want to remind everyone that tomorrow is Election Day. If you haven't already voted, please come out to vote, support Proposition EE. Our city schools, LA Unified, really needs the money. We spend about $13,000 per pupil. New York spends closer to $23,000 per pupil. California is 43 of all the states in funding for students. That puts us right uncomfortably near Mississippi and Alabama, and they're practically third world countries. So we really want, if we really care about our kids, and listen, good schools help property values, and we can't have a world-class city without having better schools. So thank you, appreciate all your support.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. We will now go to council member comments. Who would like to begin? John?
I just have two brief comments. One, I wanted to ask the city manager, obviously the request for funding for the trip to Washington, D.C. for the Transgender Advisory Board, that's not on our agenda tonight. Can you look at that and come back to us with some recommendations at a future meeting? Secondly, I've received a couple of complaints about our new street identification signs, about their visibility, particularly at night. So I would ask staff to look at that and evaluate whether we need to take any action about that.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Duran.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick comments. I'm surprised that CSW isn't here, reminding everybody it's Pride weekend. I'm guessing they're very busy this week, getting ready for the weekend. But normally this is the time where Rodney Scott or Chris Clark or somebody would come tell people about what's happening this weekend. I'll do my best. Friday night is the Dyke March, starting at the Veterans Memorial, and we'll march to San Vicente and Santa Monica to West Hollywood Park. I believe that they have announced that Paula Abdul will be entertaining Friday night at Pride. Saturday, if you haven't been paying attention, Pride is going to move onto the boulevard, so we are going to close a major part of the historic Boys Town district Saturday and Sunday. So if you live anywhere between roughly Hancock and I'll just say Doheny, everywhere west, just be prepared for major traffic impacts. A lot of the festival, because of the construction going on in the park, is being moved out into the public right-of-way to give those nonprofit booths a place to be and exist, and people can have access to information and literature without having to pay the admission fees. So a lot of the Pride Festival, for the first time, will actually be on Santa Monica Boulevard directly. So it's a good thing, I think, but we expect some major traffic snarls and impacts, so be ready for that. And then Sunday's the parade, and whether it's your first parade or your 40th parade, I hope you'll come out and join the festivities. Just one quick little thing, and then I'll be quiet, about the 50-year anniversary of Stonewall. So I think a lot of young people, and there are some here, sort of know more or less about Stonewall and what happened there that evening. But you may or may not know that the very first punch that was thrown back at the New York police that evening was thrown by a black lesbian named Stormy LaFavere. Stormy threw the first punch of resistance at Stonewall. That was followed by a black transgendered woman by the name of Marsha Johnson, who threw the first brick that night on Christopher Street. And shortly thereafter, it was a transgender Latina, Sylvia Rivera, who threw the first Molotov cocktail. Leave it to my people to make it serious all of a sudden. So when you're thinking about Stonewall and what it represents, please remember that it was sparked by people of color and transgendered individuals who led the fight at Stonewall. And also remember that 10 years prior to Stonewall, in 1959 at Cooper's Donuts here in Los Angeles on Main Street near Skid Row. So Cooper's Donuts was a donut shop between two gay bars in 1959, where actually the police came in and began to arrest transgendered people who were not dressed in the same way in which their California driver's license said their gender was, and they placed them under arrest for not dressing appropriately. And the donuts and the coffee mugs began to fly. And that was 10 years before Stonewall. The very first recorded incident of resistance was here in Los Angeles, and it once again was led by transgendered women, male hustlers, people who were on the fringes, on the outskirts, on Skid Row, and I just wanted to put that out there. So when you're thinking of Pride, don't just think about the cute boys on the Mickey's float in their underwear dancing to the bass drum. Think about the transgendered women and the people of color who led the revolution in both New York and in Los Angeles. Have a great Pride weekend.
So I would also like to ask the city manager to actually bring an item about the Trans March, maybe at our next meeting, and also to include any instances of where we have sent board members somewhere, any precedent that we might have for that. Because I do think that we have sent members of the Women's Advisory Board, I want to say we've sent them to Sacramento. So anyway, to check on that. Okay.
Planning commissioners, 2 events.
And yeah, so, because I think we do need to discuss it, so it needs to be on our agenda. I just wanted to mention that June 1st through 7th is designated as National CPR and AED Awareness Week. That's automated external defibrillators, which are used to treat sudden cardiac arrest and have successfully saved lives. The city has installed 12 automated external defibrillators in key locations at City Hall, the parks, and other city facilities. And it's also June is National Pet Preparedness Month. So since your pets cannot plan for themselves, it's important for you to make a plan for your pet safety. Here are some quick tips. Ensure all pets have some form of identification. Make a pet emergency kit. Locate a veterinarian or animal hospital in the area where you'll be seeking temporary shelter in case your pet needs medical care. Practice evacuating in the car with your animals so they're more comfortable if you need to evacuate in an emergency. That's what I got to do with Spike. Keep animals safe when it's hot. Never leave pets in the car. Temperatures can rise quickly even with the windows down and can be deadly for your pet. Be sure your pets have access to plenty of water, especially when it's hot. Please make sure your pet has plenty of shady places to go when outdoors, and avoid exercising with your pet outside on extremely hot days. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wanted to just address 3 quick things. The first is around the sort of cannabis discussion that we keep having at sort of a low boil here, which I think is really terrific. And I think if you don't know, on June 17th, we'll have an agenda item to discuss all things cannabis. I I wanted to ask our city manager if we could address, among all the other things that I'm certain are to be there, the sort of our status of consumption lounges, how we're tracking with the state legislation and its impact on the licenses we have already promised or awarded, and how businesses are either navigating through that or not, and how we might be able to help. The second is, I think the MedMen, people from MedMen who have spoken have brought up some interesting points, and I think what will be discussed on June 17th, if I'm not mistaken, is how and when and if possible to extend licenses and what the regulatory environment is around that for the rest of this year and going into next year, 2020. And finally, I'm just sort of interested in the result of our tax increment collection since our election, and if we have seen the kinds of taxes sent over to the city that we expected by business, or by, maybe perhaps not by business, but by cannabis generally. The last two items, the second is Laurel Elementary. I've been receiving some terrific, informative postcards from parents, allegedly, of children at the school, at Laurel School, but none of them are telling me how to get in touch with them. So I received your postcard, but I can't really get back in touch with you, Alice, because I can't read your signature, whatever your name might happen to be. And if you would like to hear back from me and you are going to send me one of these, maybe follow up with a phone call and leave your phone number, and I'll happily give you a call back, or you can reach me at City Hall. I'll call you back, because I think it's an interesting discussion, what's happening, what's proposed to happen, what's not happening at Laurel, and all students and parents should have all the information they want. But I think at the top of all of that is that we don't make that decision. That is made by the LAUSD, by the school board, our school board representative who represents this area, and I'm happy to facilitate dialogue with him, but as much as you might want us to make that decision, because we're pretty good at decision making, that decision doesn't come from us five. And finally, I also wanted to comment about LA Pride in West Hollywood, and it turns out that the four of us up here have all served in the last 8 years at least on the subcommittee supporting LA Pride, and in some way all of us have pushed this rock up the hill as far as we could, and we got us to this position that we're in this weekend, which is to have a free night on Friday night with a big concert and a celebrity, which I think will be an extraordinary experience, experiencing a free festival on the street that anyone can come to at any time and leave and come and go and just enjoy being in West Hollywood. And also our parade, which this year is bigger and better than ever and will be broadcast on ABC television. So I think to my colleagues and from me to LA Pride in West Hollywood, I think you have stretched yourself as far as we've asked you to push yourselves, and I want to thank you, and I'm certain we'll all have a really very exciting weekend. So thank you for that, and without any objection, we'll move to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick reports. The item regarding the advisory board travel, if we can bring that at the meeting in July, the meeting in June is going to be very heavy. So that'll allow us enough time, and we could put together a more comprehensive staff report on that item. So that'll come in July. Also, the additional information regarding cannabis, we'll include that in the staff report. There's a lot of information, a lot of things happening in Sacramento. We have been on top of it. It's very challenging, but we'll be prepared to have that discussion on the 17th. Thank you again for talking about CSW this weekend. It's going to be an amazing and spectacular event. It's also going to be a very challenging event. Logistically, for the first time, we're going to be doing a hard closure on Santa Monica Boulevard. That's going to have major impacts throughout the city and the region. So we're just asking everybody to be patient as we celebrate this important weekend. A couple of division announcements. One is from the city clerk. The LA County Vote Community Meeting is happening this Wednesday, June 5th from 6 to 8 o'clock in the council chambers. This is in regards to updates of our voting system in LA County, and it'll provide feedback on ideal voter locations. And I understand there'll be light refreshments, so show up early. Also, tying in with the Pride Weekend, the Arts Division is promoting the One City, One Pride. The West Hollywood Library exhibit, Where Love is Legal, features people who live in countries where it is illegal to be LGBTQ. You can see that upstairs in our library. Also tomorrow, here in the council chamber at 7 o'clock, the LA Jewish Film Festival will be presenting 2 documentary films, On My Way Out and Almost Liam. For more information, you could visit the city's website at www.weho.org/pride. Also, finance, this week we'll be doing our community budget presentation. I'm going to be presenting as a preview of the city, state of the city for the residential community. And we will also be doing a presentation of the preliminary budget that will be discussed in full at the June 17th meeting. And that concludes my reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, the consent calendar. Can we have?
Yes, the fiscal impact for this evening with the addition of items 4A and 5B and the removal of item 2I is $2,579,075.60 in expenditures, $0 in potential revenue, and $0 in waived fees.
All right, we have a motion to adopt from Councilmember Heilman, seconded by Councilmember Meister. We can mark our votes. Item passes 4-0. We'll move on to our public hearings. So I wonder from my colleagues and our city attorney if we can hear 3A and B and C at the same time, or did we want to hear them all separately?
In the past, the council has consolidated the reports and the hearings for those 3 items.
Any objection to doing that? Nope. Hearing none, we will do just that. So for those of you playing along at home, we're going to hear items 3A and 3B and 3C. And at the risk of being redundant, 3A is a levy of an assessment for the Santa Monica Boulevard Maintenance District for 19 and 20. The Landscape and Lighting Act, provisions of the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972. Item 3B is an adoption of a resolution confirming the Sunset Strip Business Improvement District annual report for levying and assessment. And item 3C is adoption of a resolution confirming the West Hollywood Design District, also known as the area around Melrose and Robertson, annual report. And with that, we will open the public hearing. Please.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Maribel Louie. I'm the Director of Economic Development. Joining me this evening is Tom Keeley. He is the President and CEO of Visit West Hollywood and the entity with which we contract to administer both the West Hollywood Design District and the Sunset Strip. Joining us this evening in the audience is Brett Lettieri from the Sunset Strip, as well as Nick Ingate from the West Hollywood Design District, and Jim O'Callahan, who is the Executive Director of both bids. All here, happy to help answer any questions.
Are there any questions, John?
Mayor, it looks like we have no speakers on any of them.
No questions?
So just a quick thing. The lights in the trees on Santa Monica Boulevard, I'm going to nag you until they're in the trees. So what is the plan for ultimately possibly getting decorative lighting in the trees along Santa Monica Boulevard?
So separate from the Landscape and Lighting District before you this evening, we have been doing some research on the holiday lighting for the trees, which is based on a different staff item directing council to do that research. Given the first scan of it, the cost seemed prohibitive, and so we went back to the drawing board to look at some additional options for programming that, and we anticipate bringing that back to you sometime this summer.
Okay, and I wasn't talking about holiday lighting, but year-round lighting
Yes.
of the trees. Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Meister.
Thank you. On 3B, on the list of properties, you have Clark Drive, 142 to 150. Is that a typo? Clark Drive? Because there's a Clark Street, but that would be 1100 or 1200. But this is for the Sunset Strip bid.
Yeah. We can look into that. We had updated the address ranges last year. That may have fallen out or not been cleared up, so we can take a look at that. It's intended to be the Clark Street adjacent to the Sunset Strip.
Okay. And City Clerk, this was posted as required. All of them were. All right. We will close the public hearing, and I see a motion to adopt by Councilmember Heilman and second by Councilmember Meister. We will take our votes on 3A, B, and C. All three of them pass with all 4 of our votes. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, member of the public. Item 3D is an affordable housing in lieu fee update and amendment to the master fee schedule.
No speakers. Move it.
While you're doing that, this is also a public hearing, and it was...
It was noticed as required by law.
Thank you very much. All right, please, go ahead. The public hearing is open.
Apologies. My name is Pete Noonan. I'm the city's housing manager. And this item is a request to amend the affordable housing in lieu fee and the master fee resolution. On May 6th, the City Council received a study of the affordable housing in lieu fee and discussed adjusting the fee based on the study's recommendations. After the discussion, the City Council directed staff to amend the affordable housing in lieu fee structure, basing the affordable housing in lieu fee on the California low-income housing tax credit cost of developing one affordable unit adjusted annually, plus 5% for city administrative costs, and to apply the fee proportionally so that a 10-unit project was charged the full fee and projects with fewer units were charged a discounted fee based proportionally on the number of units in the project. So the attached resolution to the staff report is consistent with that City Council direction.
All right, are there any questions? We have one member of the public, and did you want to, you said you had a question? All right, Mr. Martin, why don't you go first, and then we will.
Steve Martin, West Hollywood. No, I think that there's a lot of positive things to this, but I guess I'm just concerned that the in lieu fee for 10 units is a little over $400,000, and that doesn't really come close to building a unit or even something that's close to it, because they're kind of at the cusp of where you're starting to mandate the actual construction of units. So I'm just wondering why perhaps we have a scale that maybe it goes up higher as it gets closer to 8, 9, and 10 might pay more. I just think that we want to be in a position where we're not, by having low in lieu fees, that we're not that we're discouraging the actual construction. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe there's good reasons to not do that. I see John Hyman shaking his head, so I'm sure he can explain it to me. But that's my only concern, because I think we're all just looking to get the most bang for our buck out of our inclusionary housing program. So thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I guess we're going to just start discussing this. I guess I don't really have a question. I still have concerns about the 2 or 3 or 4 units. What we had before for duplex was, a fee of $28,000, and now it's close to $88,000. So I'm still have that concern. But also, if we're looking, I think that this fee structure is going to discourage more units and encourage bigger units. If you have a project that has, let's say, a 9,000 square foot total, and you're looking at originally 10 units, which would be a $439,000 fee, and you're going to do 900 square feet times 10 units, for $351,000 fee, you could do 8 units and do bigger units, 1,125 square feet each times 8, and be charging more for the units and probably, be making the same amount of money and paying less of a fee. So I'm wondering then if the goal is to persuade people to provide the affordable unit as opposed to paying an in lieu fee, I mean, if that's the goal, I guess that will be a question. Maybe we need to, the in lieu fee should be based on the maximum allowable density. So in other words, if you have a property that you can have 10 units, the fee should be based on 10 units, even though you're going to be doing 8 units. And in that way, you're encouraging either providing the affordable unit on site or at least going with the 10 units for that fee. So I'm just throwing it out there because I am concerned that these fees will actually just encourage fewer units and bigger units.
So, John Kehoe, maybe you can respond to that. I believe our ordinances call for 90% of units to be built, so if... And then
we actually eliminated that requirement
We
about
did.
a year ago. So now they can choose to build fewer units on a property.
Got it.
But I believe Peter does have the information about what's the decision about what we're wanting to do with the fees.
Okay.
Just to be clear, I'm not looking to force the number of units, but that the fee should be based on that, not necessarily forcing the units. So if they don't want to build out, fine, but at least the fee will cover what is allowed in that property.
Just want to provide a little bit of information on the study that the council received last meeting. Importantly, what we looked at was whether we were receiving enough money to cover the cost of building an affordable unit, and then if not, if it could be increased and still maintain project financial feasibility. So our consultant did look at the market. She looked at the market and saw that we had capacity within the market, within the profit margins, to change the fee, to increase it without changing the dynamic in the market. And so you're looking here at her work. She did look at this in terms of the R2, R3, and R4 zones, and she found on estimations that the current fees were netting, for instance, in the R2 zone, a 16% return on cost as a profit margin. She considered 12% to be considered feasible. And so with the new fee in place in that R2 zone, which would be where most of your 2, 3, and 4 unit projects would be, that the profit margin, it goes down to 14%. She saw that it's still being feasible. So in the study result was that there's no change to the current development patterns in the city from adjusting the fee. We just simply collect incrementally a little more fee, and certainly we do collect more fees at the lower end at the 2, 3, and 4 unit projects, but that we ultimately would be pulling more fee with this fee adjustment.
And there's always the option of building it on site.
There is always the option of building on site.
Councilmember Heilman.
Yeah, I think this, in some ways, kind of starkly points out the fact that we have inconsistent goals here sometimes. I think we all want to maximize the number of affordable units, but we also get pressure from the neighborhoods about density. That was part of the reason we eliminated the 90% requirement that you had to build to 90% of the allowable density. I think what your solution is, which is to require them to pay the fee regardless of the number of units based on the amount of density, in some respects, all we're saying is you got to build the higher number of units. Because if you're going to make me pay, if I'm the developer, you're going to make me pay the inclusionary fee for 10 units, and I'm only building 7, well, I'm going to build the 10 units, right? It just doesn't make any economic sense for me to have to pay the fee based on 10 units and not be able to maximize my return by building all 10 units. So I think staff has come up with the right solution here. I think if we were to change it, there would be probably a consequence that will down the line think is incorrect, because everyone will then come in with the maximum density allowed.
Any additional comments? Any questions? No? Well, then I'll make a motion to move the staff recommended item, and it's seconded by Councilmember Duran. We'll close the public hearing, and we'll mark our votes. And it passes 3-1. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 3E, which is another public hearing. We'll open the public hearing regarding the General Plan Amendment Hazard Mitigation Plan. John Kehoe and Bianca and Tara will be making a presentation.
Good evening, council members and Mayor D'Amico. My name is Tara Warden. I'm an assistant planner on the long-range planning team. Tonight we are having a public hearing to amend our general plan to incorporate our hazard mitigation plan as an appendix to the noise and safety element. This recommendation is brief and does not change the goals or policies or implementation measures of the general plan. And it is required by our federal and state law. The hazard mitigation plan was updated by the Public Safety Department in 2015. It was approved by council in November of 2018, and then later by FEMA in November of 2018 as well. And tonight we are here to adopt it into our general plan. The legal requirements are as stated. The Disaster Mitigation Act requires cities to adopt the hazard mitigation plan, and also the California Disaster Assistance Act requires cities to include the hazard mitigation plan as part of the general plan to receive 100% of the state funding in the account of a hazard or natural disaster. That concludes staff's presentation for the evening.
Item 3E, we have a motion to adopt from Councilmember Heilman, second by Councilmember Duran. Are there any speakers or comments?
I'm assuming there are no public speakers.
From my colleagues. Then we will close the public hearing and mark our votes. All right, it passes 4-0. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For that,
Thank
and
you.
our final public hearing of the evening is an ordinance amending the City of West Hollywood's municipal code in compliance with Senate Bill 946, sidewalk vendors. We will open the public hearing, assuming that it was posted in all the required places as required by law. We have no speakers on this item. Okay. And I believe Danny and Dan, there's no Oscar, but we're ready to make this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Daniel Mick. I'm the Code Compliance Supervisor with the City of West Hollywood. Joining me tonight is Danny Rivas on my left, far left. He's our new Code Compliance Manager, and Kathy Shin from the City Attorney's Office. The item before you this evening is a proposed ordinance creating a sidewalk vending program that's in full compliance with SB 946, which went into effect in January of this year. And Kathy Shin will provide the background and overview.
Thank you. Good evening. So as Dan mentioned, we're here to review the city's ordinance on sidewalk vending, which was drafted in compliance with SB 946. And just as a brief background, cities generally have the authority to regulate local businesses and activity on the public right-of-way. Unless the relevant activity is, the legislator determines that the relevant activity is a matter of statewide concern, in which case the state might preempt or preclude any local regulation of the activity or set specific parameters in which local regulation of the activity might proceed. In that case, with SB 946, the legislator has determined that sidewalk vending is a matter of statewide concern. But rather than impose state regulations of the activity, it has set parameters in which local authorities might continue to regulate the activity. Specifically, it's in broadest terms, the state has determined that sidewalk vending can no longer be criminalized, so no infractions or misdemeanor penalties for violations of a sidewalk vending ordinance, and that cities and counties cannot proceed to prohibit the activity or regulate the activity for reasons of community animus or concerns about economic competition, which would mean that the city cannot require a potential sidewalk vendor to obtain the consent or approval of a local business or of residents. But this is not to say that the state is generally discouraging local regulation of sidewalk vending. To the contrary, the state is actually much in favor of regulating sidewalk vending, as it would reasonably be in favor of regulating any commercial activity, because commercial activities generally pose a certain level of risk to the public unless regulated. And the way in which the state is promoting regulation of sidewalk vending in this case is to say that the consequence of a local authority failing to adopt a ordinance that is in compliance with the parameters set forth in SB 946 is that the local ordinance will be null and void, and the general, very basic state regulation of the activity will be in place, which is largely limited to health and safety requirements. So sidewalk vendors of food will be required to obtain a health and safety permit from the county, and that's it. And so and no one really wants that. The state is not encouraging that, but by setting that consequence, it is encouraging local authorities to quickly adopt a compliant local regime. And so what we have in the proposed ordinance is such a regulatory scheme. The city is proposing to regulate through a new business license, sidewalk vending. And we've worked very hard at examining all of the state criteria for the activity and specific concerns to the city. One twist in the presentation today is that in light of LA Pride being around the corner, we are recommending that staff is recommending that the item be adopted as an urgency ordinance. With that, I will take any questions.
I see Heilman and Durana Meister. Do you have questions, or do you, please?
Yeah,
Okay.
my question is a minor question about a particular section and the language. I understand it, I just think it's not as clear as it could be. Section 5.122.080, page 7 of the ordinance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just no sidewalk vendor shall operate in the following locations, any public property other than a sidewalk, including without limitation, streets, alleys. I think the clause at the end is misplaced. I think you mean to say that no sidewalk vendor shall operate in any public property, including without limitation, streets, alleys, and city-owned parking structures, except on a public sidewalk. So is that the intention of the ordinance?
So I think we're saying the same things in two different ways. The Right, the intention was that sidewalk vending is only permitted on sidewalks, so not on any public property other than a sidewalk, but that other than a sidewalk could be placed at the end if that's clearer.
Right. It's just that the clause at the end is really modifying public property. It's not modifying sidewalks. So I
Right.
think it just needs to be in a different place in this sentence.
Okay. Sure.
Councilmember Duran.
I'm trying to be cooperative, but I don't like this at all. I don't like sidewalk vendors. I don't like splattering grease all over Santa Monica Boulevard. I don't like people having to be worried about being burned by sidewalk vendors. I just don't like it, but I think you're telling me it doesn't matter whether I like it or I don't like it, because this is what the state's trying to do, is to trump us. This is where my libertarian side comes out, and I'm a firm believer in local control, and I don't think Sacramento should be telling us what to do on the Sunset Strip or on Santa Monica Boulevard or on Melrose or anywhere else. And so I guess I don't like it. I'm done. That's all. I just don't like it. I don't like it, and I guess my colleagues are going to tell me whether I like it or not. I'm going to have to vote for it because we don't have a choice, but I don't like it. That really wasn't a question. It was just an affirmation of not liking something.
Councilmember Duran. Councilmember Meister.
Do we have any public comment on this? No, but, okay. So I don't really have a question either, except it's my understanding that we have to allow for this to happen between the hours of 6 a.m. and 2 a.m. because of that's a standard business hours. Is that right?
Yes, so the ordinance prohibits sidewalk vending in the city between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And so I should point out that sidewalk vending in residential zones is restricted separately. And those are subject to greater hours. I think it was between, it's only permitted between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. And so really the 2 a.m., 6 a.m. Restriction is getting to sidewalk vending in commercial zones. And state law does provide that sidewalk vending on any street can only be restricted on a par with other businesses on the street. So if you're going to impose hours limitations, then it should be the same hours limitations that are imposed on other commercial businesses on the same street.
But we condition businesses. I mean, we have conditions for businesses where we tell them what hours they can work, don't we? I mean, don't we have examples of businesses that we condition?
Yeah.
So my understanding was that the hours, general hours limitations in the municipal code was for 2 a.m. and 6 a.m.
But we give out conditional use permits that condition hours. I'm pretty sure we do that at the Planning Commission.
Well, we can, a sidewalk vendor can apply for an additional hours than.
Well, I'm not looking for additional hours.
Right,
I'm looking
right.
for less hours.
But on a specific street, if there is a restriction on the businesses on a certain street, we could impose restrictions for that street. The state law is really drafted in terms of don't be more restrictive on a particular street than you are to other businesses.
Okay, and then I think that we would need to have also about, you have something about valets that 25 feet from any on-street valet loading zone, but we also have drop zones, and we have all kinds of zones happening that we shouldn't have carts in front of.
Yeah, and so we can add additional language to the valet loading zone provision to provide, so within 25 feet, so this is saying that no sidewalk vendor shall operate in locations within 25 feet of any on-street valet loading zone. And we can add language saying any city-designated passenger loading zone or any taxi cab stand.
Okay, and can we go back to the residential part? I don't understand, I mean, we don't allow businesses to happen in residential zones, so why would we have those hours for a residential zone?
Right, and so the ordinance does restrict or prohibit stationary sidewalk vendors in residential zones. And the state law categorizes sidewalk vendors into stationary sidewalk vendors, which are those vendors that are permitted to operate from a fixed location, and roaming sidewalk vendors, which the state law provides cannot stop in one location, but they have to keep moving, and it may only stop to complete a transaction, a sale of some sort. And the state law specifically says that roaming sidewalk vendors cannot be prohibited outright from residential zones, but they can be subject to reasonable regulations, including hours limitations, which is what we have here.
Okay, and what happens if we don't approve this?
If the city does not adopt an ordinance, then a sidewalk vendor can begin operating without the city's permission, effectively, anywhere, because the city has not restricted any locations.
So can I follow up on that? So what's the magic with, what's today? June 3rd? Why didn't this come to us on January 2nd?
So the city, unlike some other cities that had previously prohibited sidewalk vending, West Hollywood did not prohibit sidewalk vending. The vendors are currently regulated under the peddler's ordinance, right? And so we could have continued with the peddler's ordinance, and the staff did not find any need to jump on this ordinance because we didn't have any complaints about the issue, except for some complaints regarding vendors operating without a a health and safety permit from the county, which can be regulated separately from the local ordinances. So we took our time to re-examine the peddler's ordinance because what we could have done is basically change the penalties provision in the peddler's ordinance to make it compliant with state law and then just continue regulating under the peddler's ordinance. But the peddler's ordinance was passed years ago, and staff was assessing the types of complaints that it's had and introducing additional locations restrictions that are not in the existing ordinance. And so the ordinance before you is actually much more thorough and complex, much more sophisticated and targeted to pedestrian facing vending than the existing peddler's ordinance.
So just two other questions. So on the same location that Councilmember Howland, 5.122.080, you have a list of locations, 400 feet of this, 100 feet of that, these hours and those hours, and I mean, I heard you say we can't do any of that, and then you just did that. So what's that?
So the city is permitted to regulate in the public sidewalk in the public right of way when it has objective reasons related to the public health, safety, and welfare for doing so, right? So it cannot restrict just because we don't like it or because out of concern for economic competition with local businesses. Those are not reasonable, legitimate grounds for regulating. But if we have concerns about pedestrian access to the sidewalks, not only disability access, but the city also has separate requirements for unobstructed pedestrian paths on a sidewalk.
So,
that type of regulation.
So I guess that's really what I want to know is it possible for us, press the button, is it possible
I
for
was
us
hearing them talk.
to, I know it has to be every 200 feet or less, is it possible for us to make street vendor locations and just put them every 200 feet and number them and say, you can get 56, or you can get location number 107 or location 1040. But, you know, when 3 people want to be in front of Catch selling umbrellas and, you know, stickers and whatever, you know, what are our options? And to me, it seems like we just had the 3 merchant organizations for Melrose and Santa Monica Boulevard and Sunset, and I don't know that we did any outreach to them about where they would like these street vendors to be. And we had hours and hours of discussion of scooters and how they're obstructing people's the walkability of our city. So it feels to me like it is much more developed than our peddlers ordinance. I'll take you at your word, but it feels like it's not fine-tuned enough for our city's sort of very complicated set of comings and goings. And in my mind, we would have a map, and we would say, these are areas where you can't do it, and these are areas where you can, and at every 200 feet, we have a peddler location, and, you know, and that's where somebody can, you know, I would like to register to use number 56, and that's what they get. So is that something we can develop?
It's something that staff can look into. I think one reason we didn't set out a predetermined set of permissible locations is, one, we didn't receive so many applications expressing interest in sidewalk vending until much more recently, and it seemed a lot more practical, just from an ordinance drafting point, to set forth the restrictions, and then as applications come in, see how where one person might want to once they've expressed where they want to be vending, then determine, is that permissible or not. I believe it would have taken staff much more work to set out predetermined map of locations, and it wouldn't cover the roaming vendors, for example, because they wouldn't be pegged to a certain
But
location.
they can't stop, so.
Right,
I mean,
right.
It's both a solution and a problem.
Right.
All right, I've asked enough questions. Thank you. Councilmember Heilman?
Yeah, I think this goes back to Councilmember Duran. I don't like this either. I don't think any of us want this. I think the legislature has usurped local control. If we don't pass anything, then it's whatever the vendors want. What I think the attorney has come forward with, and the idea here, is that they're trying to give us the maximum amount of regulatory authority that we actually can exercise as a city, and doing it in a way that is lawful and compliant with state law. So if I had my way, I would ban these altogether. I wouldn't allow them in the city. But the state legislature has taken that power away from us. It has allowed us the power to place reasonable, objective standards, and I think they've come up with as best a job as they can possibly do here. The idea of creating, you know, here are the 70 places where you can do this, I don't want to do that either, because I think that might actually encourage people to look for locations in the city, and I don't want to encourage this. The way it's written, within 200 feet of another vendor, that makes them disperse somewhat, and it, to some degree, leaves them uncertain as to whether or not their location is a valid one. And I kind of like that aspect of the ordinance, because it doesn't give them a guarantee, which is something I don't think any of us want to do. So I'm reluctantly in support of this with the 2 minor changes that have been made, because I think it gives us our best opportunity to regulate this activity, keeping in mind that the state has permitted it over our objections.
Councilmember Meister.
I guess if we did nothing, what is the very minimum that a vendor has to have? A license from the health department?
Only if they're serving food.
Right.
If they're serving food. Okay, so if
But
they're
if they're
serving
selling
food,
stuffed animals, they could just open on the sidewalk.
Right.
Or rainbow flags or anything else they want to sell on the sidewalk.
Right.
There's no regulation at all unless we pass this.
Right.
and aren't we allowed to regulate based on our assessment of health and safety? That's why you have vendors going to other sides of the street, and they can't be here during these hours and those hours. And wouldn't you say like a Friday, Saturday, and Friday and Saturday night and Sunday afternoon on Santa Monica Boulevard, that would be a health and that would be a public safety issue. It already is. I've heard, a number of complaints from people, and one person in particular for the last 5 years about these vendors, and they don't follow any kind of anything. They don't have licenses from the health department. They don't. So I'm just wondering if we know already, like on Halloween and on Pride weekend, and on Friday and Saturday nights, we have thousands of people on Santa Monica Boulevard. It is a safety issue. And yet we're saying, well, yeah, you can be there from, 10 a.m., you can be there from 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. the following day.
No, on Santa Monica Boulevard in the area up here, between 10 and 2 a.m. is restricted.
Right.
So in other places on Santa Monica, they would be permitted, but not in the area between Robertson and Palm, between Laurel and Hayward. So I think they've looked at where are the high concentration places on evenings, and they have said that those are off limits.
I guess I would have to say that I think it should be from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., and I think it should also include Sunday on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I think we should also include the areas along the Sunset Strip where we only have a sidewalk that's 4 feet wide. I just don't think this is checked in enough to what's actually going on. And I think it's really smart in terms of its policy development, but I don't think it reflects what happens, at Sunset Plaza. I believe we moved the sidewalk 4 feet at Sunset Plaza, right? To take it away from the Montgomerys, and so we only have a 4-foot sidewalk at Sunset Plaza. And so we're gonna put a 3-foot cart on a 4-foot sidewalk?
So, in that scenario, if it was a 4-foot sidewalk, then there would be no space left for a sidewalk vendor. It's a 4-foot clearance that is required. So in that case, no sidewalk vending would be permitted in that location. The other option is that the council could adopt the ordinance with the suggested amendments on the floor and come back in with additional amendments after staff has had an opportunity to consider some of the council members' additional concerns and after Pride.
Right, so I have a suggestion that might accomplish that because there's 2 ordinances before you tonight. One is the urgency ordinance, which does require 4 votes to pass. Just a reminder, that was in the staff report. If you were comfortable enough with the provisions to adopt that tonight, you don't have to introduce the permanent ordinance on first reading, and staff could think about some of these questions that you've asked, maybe tailor it a little bit more to the times and the locations you've been talking about, and bring back the permanent reading for introduction on first reading at a meeting in the future. I don't remember our exact meeting schedule for the summer, so I don't want to say a specific date, but in the next few weeks.
Well, I like that solution because at least we would have something in effect to regulate the activity during the Pride weekend. And then we could introduce the regular ordinance at a later date.
Right, so the actions would be recommendation number 1 and number 3, and then not act on recommendation number 2 in your staff report.
I will make that motion.
And I guess I wonder what passing this urgency ordinance does. It requires people who want to sell things on Saturday to come in and get a business license?
I'm gonna pop that.
Yes, it would. And it would allow the city to prohibit sidewalk vending within a block of especially permitted events, including the Pride Festival. So it would be completely prohibited within the vicinity of the event, so.
I seconded the motion, but I need to check in with my colleagues, make sure we got 4 votes. If there's any other amendments we need to take to get 4 votes, because it sounds really important that we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say I would vote for the urgent, but not the permanent. You know, I do think we need to go back and look at some of these concerns, and also look at if we're allowed to, you know, ask for a CUP and be able to establish hours, more specific hours than whatever is allowed on the street.
I don't think that would be consistent with state law, but I think Lauren can tell us that when we come back with the first introduction of the regular ordinance.
Right.
Okay, but when Horvath's back, I may vote no next time.
So we are considering passing an urgency item that requires 4 votes to put this in our municipal code, and also a resolution of the City Council to amend the master fee resolution so that we can get people to get a business license and pay their fees.
I just have one last question. How is enforcement going to change with this being passed? Because I know that we've tried to enforce, you know, and we've had a difficult time because it's like the scooters, you can't keep up with them. Are we going to be able to get more officers with all the business license fees we'll be collecting?
Yeah, I mean, I believe we're still going to have the same challenges that we've had for quite a while, but for the past 6 months or so, we have not had a truly enforceable ordinance. At least now, as long as this gets passed, we'll have something that has some teeth to it. It actually may help prevent people from just running away from code compliance or the health department when they see us out doing enforcement, because under the peddler's ordinance, it becomes a misdemeanor violation, and there are some certain fears that come with that. Whereas if this is just an administrative fine, the state law does say that there has to be some flexibility in or you have to take into account the person's ability to pay. We can also require, public service, community service in lieu of fines. So there may be, hopefully, a little bit more willingness to comply with city guidelines with any luck whatsoever. But we will have some challenges with this. We understand that. We just don't know how big yet.
I think, Dan, my biggest challenge is that on Halloween and on Pride, there are police and barricades at every street. You can't walk by them without them looking at you, but somehow people get to push carts filled with hot dogs and bacon right past them, and nobody stops them. And I think if we're really saying we're passing this to do that, then I want to know we're going to do it. And otherwise, I'm not going to vote for it, because I can't support this at all. It just doesn't make sense to me that we're setting up a regulatory way for this to go down, and we're not going to enforce it.
I mean, on those large events, we will continue to. We have half our staff working, these events. So we also partner with the health department and the sheriff's department to address these to the best of our abilities. Our resources are strained on those big events, but we do what we can. to the very best of our abilities, and we'll continue to do so. And if we can find better, more efficient methods and practices, we will certainly do that.
And I just want to mention that separate from this vote, I think we need to have a discussion about what the state has been doing and taking away local control. And I really do. And I think we might also want to look at, I believe that there are some cities that are suing the state because of this ordinance, because of this requirement. And maybe we need to look at that and see exactly what that looks like.
Yeah, I have to say, I would rather we didn't do anything and we just enforced what we have and we join the lawsuit against the state and say, we don't want to be doing this. We don't want this to be what goes on in our city. I mean, I don't know how this protects us any differently than what we already have.
So,
Maybe you explained it, and I'm not an attorney, so maybe you just need to explain it again.
sure, the consequence of not adopting the ordinance is that the city could not enforce any of it. It couldn't enforce the peddlers ordinance against sidewalk vendors, for example. That part, those provisions in the peddlers ordinance no longer are enforceable against sidewalk vendors. And the only thing that the city could issue citations for or take any action on is for sidewalk vendors who are not operating with a county health permit. And that would be the extent of any action that the city could take against sidewalk vending.
They can't take action against health and safety violations if it's unsafe for the community to have someone on the sidewalk selling things?
You mean apart from having a health permit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it couldn't because it's not in the law now. There isn't, we don't have, the city doesn't have provisions saying that, providing notice to sidewalk vendors that, in fact, this is a violation. In fact, this is creating this health and safety standard. And so since we don't provide notice of that to vendors, and the state has said that it is a legal activity otherwise, the city could not take action for health and safety reasons, absent an ordinance or resolution.
Councilman Rowan?
Yeah, and maybe this will help. So right now, based on state law, if somebody wanted to go to Santa Monica and San Vicente or Santa Monica and Robertson and plop down on the sidewalk and start selling rainbow flags or balloon animals or stuffed animals or anything that doesn't require a health permit, we would have no power to enforce unless we adopt this ordinance.
Correct.
And currently, if somebody wants to sell food products, they need a health license from the county health department. But if they got one, they could have their cart anywhere on Santa Monica Boulevard or Sunset without limitation, and under state law, they would be allowed to do that because we don't have an ordinance in effect.
Correct.
And if we adopt this urgency ordinance tonight, put aside the issues of how vigorously we're able to enforce, we would at least be able to say to those vendors, no, you cannot operate here. This is within 200 feet of another vendor, or you cannot operate here because it's between the hours of 10 and 2 on Santa Monica. You cannot operate here because you're within 400 feet of a school. So if we pass an ordinance, we would be able to regulate those activities.
Correct.
Thank you.
So what did we do last weekend?
Actually, I was on vacation, so I'm going to have to defer to sorry.
Yeah. I mean, what's so magical about today? I mean, we didn't, are you saying we didn't have anything in place since January and you're just telling us today? Or we have something in place and now that we've talked about it, we've lifted the veil and so it has to go away? I mean, what if this is not baked enough? It's not really an ordinance that I can support.
Right, so the urgency, the provision here was for Pride weekend, and if that's not an issue for the council, then there is no urgency for the ordinance, and we could continue to work on it as we have. It was only after the council had recently widened the footprint of Pride weekend that staff expressed concerns that maybe we need something in place in advance of that, because more streets are being closed than historically have been, and staff wasn't clear how much more of a crowd that would draw, and how many more vendors that would draw as a result. And that's the only reason that we are bringing this as an urgency item. But if the council finds that it's not, then we don't need to
But
pass it.
actually, now that you've tied those two things together, that we're taking over the street that we have to be able to manage, but I still, maybe you explained it, I still don't understand what we've been doing for the last 6 months. We've just been pretending we have an ordinance and waiting for an ordinance. I mean, what's been the law of the land for 6 months since January 1st?
So, I'm sorry, Mayor D'Amico, so the difference to what we're proposing today is it would give our code compliance staff the ability to issue citations in compliance with state law, whereas right now, it's just an officer making contact with the individual and educating them, and not having the ability to issue a citation because it's not in compliance. Our current ordinance is in compliance with state law, so we don't have the ability to issue a citation and hold them accountable for that, whereas by adopting this, we would be able to.
Okay, we ready to take a vote? Yes.
Sorry. On the roaming sidewalk vendors, how did we come up with 8 p.m. to 9 a.m.? Can that be 8 a.m., that they cannot be roaming between 8 p.m. and 9 a.m.? Is there a way we can expand the hours that they cannot be roaming?
I mean, it's something that staff can look into. Were there specific hours that?
No, I just wondered how we came up with from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. they could be roaming.
I think those are generally the hours in which
people eat hot dogs.
Staff thought that, well, the emphasis is more on the hours you cannot be vending, right? And so after 8 p.m., noise concerns basically in a residential zone, we're driving this part of it.
I mean, I would think that that's noisy on a weekend or weekday evening, at 8 p.m. I mean, we don't, we have permit parking laws that we don't let people park after 7 p.m.
Right.
So I just wondered where that came from and if we could expand the amount of time that they cannot be roaming, or if that was also set by the state.
Well, it seems like that would be done in item 2 when it comes back to us. Yeah. Okay. Is that right? We can do it then? Okay. And I'm with her from 12 to 6. Seems like a perfectly good time to sell ice cream bars from a roving ice cream machine. Why don't we, Councilmember Harman, I see you're still, okay. We have a motion and a second.
It's a test.
It is, it's a nightmare. I blame Senator Wiener. Thank you very much for all that. It was really clear, and I'm a little slow, and I didn't want to understand.
No, of course.
Thank you. I believe we moved 4A to consent. We are now on item 4B, which is 1343 Laurel Avenue, a feasibility study initiated by Councilmember Duran and Meister.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an item introduced by Councilmember Meister and myself. We are the subcommittee on 1343 North Laurel. In the past, we went through a community process to gather some ideas on what to do with 1343 Laurel. Long history with this property. It's been going on since I joined council in 2001, and even prior to that. I think we all know that we initially tried to develop some senior housing at this particular location and went up to the Supreme Court and were not successful there, and came back, and for the most part, right now 1343 Laurel is primarily used, the grounds are used for people to gather or dog walking, while the remainder of the house and chauffeur's cottage and back garage end up, in essence, mothballed without providing any utility to the community. This is an attempt, therefore, to try to move forward with one of the possible visions for this was arts and cultural or community gathering spaces and park. One of the challenges of this site is that by anticipating large crowds, it means it requires building more parking, and building more parking means tearing up the grounds, which we don't want to do, given that that's one of the more attractive features of the property. So in essence, we want to use it, we just don't want to use it that hard, because the more that people use it, the more impact on the property. So it's an attempt to try to balance historic preservation along with public park space, along with community utility and community use space, and to come up with something so that the property doesn't languish there without providing any benefits to the community. And with that, I'll yield to Councilmember Meister if she wishes to add anything.
Yeah, I would just add that that our Arts Division also, looked at the site in terms of doing an artist in residence program, and an artist in residence program is can be actual residents that rotate over over a year or whatever, or it can be artists working at the site and providing classes and having interaction with the community. And that was something that was the community really liked about the arts plan. So that's something that we would, also want to look at, as well as arts nonprofit funding for that type of use. And so we did actually have a little informal meeting with a couple of our commissioners and brainstorm that, and it seemed like that was something that was of interest to this group, and that's why we're presenting it now.
All right, we have two members of the public, Manny Rodriguez and Steve Martin. Mr. Rodriguez.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Manny Rodriguez. I live in West Hollywood. The recent history of 1343 Laurel has defined one of the great failures of local activism in West Hollywood. It's because of local activists, some of which we've never heard from again, that this valuable and grand property has remained dormant, useless, and sad for the last 15 years. The 2013 Community Vision Workshop described in this staff report was flippant, misguided, and ill-conceived. The results were not only embarrassing, they were cruel, short-sighted, uninformed, and ignorant. The vision expressed in that survey isn't worth the paper it's written on. As you review what to do with this property moving forward, I hope that you'll go beyond suggestions of game nights, art classes, or dog parks. Think about the original 2003 City and Council approved plans for this property. It included 28 units of low-income senior housing in the back of the property, a restored carriage house, a restored main house with parts of it used as a community space, and all that with underground parking. What a concept, parking. But community activism gone awry put the kibosh on that plan. 1343 Laurel has always been a place where people lived. Please go beyond talking about frivolous and temporary uses and begin planning for something that can actually help people in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Steve Martin is our second and last speaker.
Steve Martin, West Hollywood. And, you know, we've had that discussion, and that's why we're having this discussion, and I'm glad you guys are bringing it forward, because it is overdue, and there's lots of things that we can do. People do enjoy the open space there right now, but we need to look at the realistic parameters, as you guys have stated. But, you know, there are ways of doing this. I love actual artist in residence there. I don't know if any of you been to places like Asheville. You know, we could build all kinds of different facilities there, whether it's for potters, painters, sculptors, glass blowers. There's all kinds of exciting things that could happen there. There's a large space in there that could be used for people demonstrating how to do art. When they're not doing that, there could be local yoga classes there. There could be a lot of things there. It's just that we seem to be still fighting old battles, and we're just not allowing our imagination to be used in ways that are really productive here. And I think it's a little disappointing, given the fact that I think you guys do have a vision for this place, and a vision that makes this property part of the community in a way that everybody can enjoy. And we have talked about figuring out ways of making art more accessible to people and more meaningful to people. And I think this is one way of doing it. But there are lots of other uses that could be used in ways that, for social services, that I think could be really, really productive. This is, you know, the community consensus was that this was a jewel that needed to be preserved. And the original city focus kind of made a sham of that. And that's why we're here today. If it had been approached in a different, more respectful way, we wouldn't be here today. But we can't go back and rewrite history. So let's move forward, and I thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any comments? Councilmember Heilman?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this forward. I like the idea of using this property for residential purposes, which was always the intention. I'm a little bit concerned about the cost compared to the number of units. I'm also concerned about the focus on artist housing versus other types of affordable housing. You took it to the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission and had a conversation with them. I think if you went to the Senior Advisory Board, it would be a different conversation. Or if you went to the Disabilities Advisory Board, there'd be a different conversation. I think that this conversation, if we are going to look at the options for using this for housing, we really need to be thinking about all the stakeholders and not just artists. I think art is great. I think it's great to have art in the community, but prioritizing artists over social workers or teachers or disabled long-term residents of the city doesn't seem to make sense, given the amount of money that we're likely going to have to spend to rehab this property. So if we're moving forward with this, I would like to get input from other boards and commissions, including our social services department.
I guess I would say that I support this. I would hope that it won't take too long to come back to us with the answer to these three recommendations. I think our city has prioritized housing for people with disabilities, and it has prioritized housing for seniors, and has prioritized low and very low income housing. And in the interim, West Hollywood as a affordable place for artists to move to or spend time has become more and more complicated. And so in some way, I think this is a way for us to pay attention to our creative class that has really been responsible for much of West Hollywood's well-deserved and quite prosperous creative name. And so I support this. I hear what some of the concerns are from the audience and my colleague, but I also think it's super important to really focus and perhaps provide exactly what's asked for here. So we have a motion and we have a second. I think we're ready to vote. And it passes 3-1. Thank you very much. All right, I believe we are moving on to item 5A, which is tabled, and 5B, which has gone to consent. And so now we are going to item 2I, which is authorize the participation of the California Joint Powers Insurance Agency for general liability and workers' compensation insurance. David, what's up?
Hello.
So there are some questions.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled this because I just feel like I needed more of an explanation. I mean, when I did the math, I understand that the base costs are less with, hold on, I'm just trying to find my notes. With CJPIA, that it's 96 or 97,000 when you just look at the, without the self-insured retention. And the self-insured retention is basically a deductible. And if we were to be sued, I think that is not a big enough difference to make this worthwhile, because with the SIR, we're looking at a difference of 203,000 in favor of the PARSAC. So I want to understand that that's the right way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When there's always a possibility of being sued.
Yeah. Yes. So there's always a possibility, and the higher SIR is more risk. But based on the city's evaluation of it, we are recommending CJPIA even with the higher SIR. The city's overall claims history has been very good. If you look at the charts, page 4 of 9, that one looks at liability. You'd see all of our claims are down in the very low area except 2 there. We generally have a good claims history. We just have had a few of those higher profile, high dollar claims, but those don't happen very often. Prior to 2015, we went 11 years without any employment type claims. And so we are hoping and planning to get back to that. As part of the evaluation, CJPIA did do initial risk management evaluation and provided us with some recommendations that the city will follow through with, which should also help our potential for claims going forward. But you are correct, the higher the SIR, the more risk there is.
I mean, if we looked at just the last 5 years, I mean, compared to the 5 years before that, I mean, I'm just wondering if there's a trend here with lawsuits, and that's what concerns me.
Yeah. I think most of our bad experience actually happened within 1 year. It was all in fiscal year 15-16, was where all the claims started. They just tend to take a long time. Overall, looking at the 5 years as a whole, there definitely has been more claims than it was the previous 5 years, but it hasn't been a steady number of increasing claims over those 5-year periods. It was a lot of claims at one time, and hopefully we're on the downside of that cycle now.
Is the SIR per event, or is it per year?
Per event. So for every claim, we would pay the first $500,000 for employment claims.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I guess I don't have any more questions. I was noticing that it was 5 years ago when I was sitting in this seat that we changed. And I'm wondering if Parsac is asking us to leave, if that's why we're moving.
They are not. We've actually have had a good relationship with Parsac. With any of these pools, there's a requirement to stay for 3 years. And so we were actually with CJPIA for 20 years prior to going with Parsac, and then we did our due diligence analysis to find a lower price insurance. That's when we ended up going with Parsac. While we've had good experience with Parsac, they also work with IRMA, which provides the employment portion of their for employment claims. We haven't necessarily had a good relationship with them. So I think it's the combination of working with CJPIA, who they don't pool with anyone else for the employment claims. It's all directly through CJPIA. So I think part of it is being a better fit with CJPIA. And then the other part of it is just doing that analysis every 4 or 5 years just to see where we are insurance-wise.
And when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that CJPIA has come forward with a list of suggestions around our own HR policies to limit our liability, and we will be reviewing those with them. Should we take on work service with them?
Yes, and not just our HR policies, but they do a full review of all the city's risks. So it's looking at facilities, it's looking at everything, and they provide a list of recommendations. But yes, it did include recommendations for our HR policies.
But that will be after we settle on a price for insurance coverage. Not doing that evaluation and then considering changing the price.
No, correct. We've already settled on the price prior to that evaluation.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm ready to cast our vote. All right, motion passes 3-1. That is our meeting. We have one more public comment. Sorry about that. And we have a public commenter, Charlene DeChico.
So my name is Charlene DeChico, and I am the producer and host of a West Hollywood public access program called Addiction and Recovery TV. So I'm a new resident here to West Hollywood, but this program has been a passion of mine for some time, since I had went to Washington and had the opportunity to interview the U.S. Surgeon General amongst others for our Unite to Face Addiction rally that was held a few years ago. So I am here today for a few things, a few reasons. And first, I just want to make mention and also extend an invitation, which I have left here, the flyer and the kind of the overview of what I'm asking here today or talking about. So we have an upcoming event on June 16th here in West Hollywood in the auditorium. It's a free event, and it's going to be a learning day raising mental health and awareness. And so we would like to circulate our upcoming event flyer, and also we're really looking for participation by speaking, and we're in need of mental health clinicians in this area to rally with us in this effort. So I have stated that, and I have also reached out to the members of City Council, and that's why I'm here tonight, and just to kind of put the face with the name, because we're also looking for, that's the first reason, invitation of this event, and the second thing is we are looking for continued support, either through collaboration with West Hollywood WehoTV, because finally, in closing, I'm an independent producer of this broadcast, and I've been doing everything and trying to air these shows, and this event is free that we're giving. We're having free food and speakers, but we need continued support with this program. And if we had the excellence of WehoTV, it would provide much more awesome programming. So everything is in writing, and I just want to urge you to honestly, there has to be an advocate in this council that would want to be a part of this, I hope. And so that is why I'm here tonight, to urge you to show involvement and to circulate this flyer. It's kind of short notice.
Thank you very much. And you did give it to the city clerk, because she will distribute it. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Awesome. No, does anyone comment or just?
We can't really comment back to you, but if you've given us your information, we know how to get in touch. And
Awesome. I did leave the email and hope that you guys will respond.
thank you very much. All right. This is the end of our current meeting. We're going to adjourn to
Recess into closed session.
recess to a closed session.
And I'll just remind everybody, because we added the item to the agenda, it's a matter of pending litigation, City of West Hollywood versus MDA Johnson Farivo, LA Superior Court, case number SC 122763, and it's added as a matter of pending litigation under Government Code 54956.9D1.
And if any action is taken, you will report
I'll
that
come
out at
back
our
out
June
and make a-
17th meeting or this evening?
I'll come back out after the meeting and make a report.
All right. And that will be televised?
And if anyone is, yeah, that's fine. They can continue.
I just want to do whatever's
Yeah.
regular. I mean, I'm, just trying to do it right the first time.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
We will continue televising the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening. Just to follow up on the closed session, the council recessed into a closed session at about 8:40 p.m. to discuss the matter of pending litigation, City of WeHo versus MDA Johnson Favreau, case number SC 122763, and took no reportable actions. Thank you. And the meeting is adjourned.